Jake Morrison straightened his simple black suit and walked toward the massive doors of the council chamber. Around him, the corridor buzzed with activity as other species prepared for the monthly session. The sight never failed to amaze him. Even after 3 years as Earth's ambassador, the Zephyrians moved in perfect formation, their 6 warrior drones surrounding their diplomat like a living shield. Each drone stood 8 feet tall with gleaming metal skin and forearms that ended in deadly claws. They moved without making a sound, their compound eyes scanning every corner for threats. Near the chamber entrance, the Valdori delegation shimmered behind layers of energy shields. The crystalline beings looked like living diamonds, their bodies catching and reflecting the station's lights in rainbow patterns. Their protective barriers hummed with power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The Nethrons floated in their special containment suits, their gaseous forms swirling like colored smoke behind transparent walls. Without their protective gear, they would scatter into the station's atmosphere and die within minutes. Even the peaceful Eldani needed help. 3 of their kind surrounded their ambassador, holding hands in a circle. Their large, gentle eyes glowed with soft light as they worked together to keep their representative calm and focused. Jake watched them all and felt the familiar weight of being different. He carried no weapons, wore no armor, and brought no guards. In his jacket pocket he had only a simple tablet with Earth's notes and a pen that his daughter had given him for luck. "Ambassador Morrison," called a young woman's voice. Jake turned to see Vera Chen hurrying toward him. She was new to the diplomatic team, fresh from Earth's academy with bright eyes and endless questions. Her supervisor had warned Jake that she was curious about everything. "Yes, Miss Chen," Jake replied. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but I've been wondering about something." Vera looked around at all the other delegations with their guards and protection. "Why don't we bring any security? Everyone else seems to think the chamber is dangerous." Jake smiled. It was a fair question, one that every new human diplomat eventually asked. "The chamber isn't dangerous to us. But why not? What makes humans different?" Before Jake could answer, a deep voice spoke behind them. "Because humans are the only species that can survive the truth of this place." They turned to see the Keeper of Records approaching. The ancient being looked like a tall, thin tree made of dark wood and silver metal. Its face had no expression, but its voice carried the weight of countless years. Nobody knew exactly how old the Keeper was, but rumor said it had been present when the council was first built. Vera's eyes widened. "What truth?" The Keeper's head tilted slightly. "Young human, you will learn in time. Your species has a gift that others do not possess. It is both a blessing and a burden." The massive doors to the chamber began to open with a deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The sound made every species react differently. The Zephyrians tightened their formation. The Valdori's shields grew brighter. The Nethrons' containers sealed with soft clicks. Jake felt nothing except the familiar pull of duty. He nodded to Vera and walked toward the entrance. "Wait," Vera called after him. What did the Keeper mean? What truth? Jake paused at the threshold of the chamber. Inside, he could see the great circular room with its hundreds of seats rising in tiers around a central speaking area. Ancient symbols covered the walls, glowing with faint light. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above. "The truth at this place shows you who you really are," Jake said quietly. "And most species can't handle that knowledge alone." He stepped into the chamber and immediately felt the familiar sensation wash over him. It was like standing in the eye of a storm. Everything around him seemed to press inward, but he remained untouched at the center. Other ambassadors entered with their protectors, but Jake walked to his seat by himself. The Zephyrian ambassadors' drones formed a perfect circle around their leader's chair. Their metal bodies gleamed under the chamber's strange light, and their eyes never stopped moving, watching for dangers that would never come. The Valdori representative sat within a bubble of pure energy, completely isolated from the chamber's atmosphere. The rainbow patterns on their crystalline skin shifted faster now, showing signs of stress despite their protection. The Eldani ambassador was guided to her seat by her 3 companions, who continued holding hands even after she sat down. Without their mental support, she would collapse within minutes of entering the chamber. Jake took his seat in the human section and looked around. Earth had been given a place among the founding species, an honor that had surprised everyone 50 years ago when humans first made contact with the galaxy. Most new species had to wait centuries to earn such respect. Now Jake understood why humans had been welcomed so quickly. The session began with the traditional lighting of the council fire, a pillar of energy that rose from the center of the chamber. As the light grew brighter, Jake felt the sensation intensify. It was like having a bright light shined directly into his thoughts, examining every corner of his mind. The other species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Zephyrians' drones moved closer to their ambassador. The Valdori's shields flared brighter. The Nethrons' containers hummed with increased power. Jake sat quietly and let the sensation wash over him. He had learned not to fight it. Whatever this place did, it had no effect on humans beyond making them more aware of their own thoughts. The first issue of the day was a trade dispute between the Zephyrians and a mining consortium. Jake listened to both sides present their arguments, watching how the other ambassadors reacted. They seemed to respond not just to the words being spoken, but to something else, something Jake couldn't see or feel. Their decisions came quickly, almost automatically. The Valdori representative voted before the arguments were even finished. The Eldani ambassador nodded in agreement with whatever her companions whispered to her. Jake took notes on his tablet and made his own choice based on the facts presented. Earth sided with the mining consortium because their proposal was more fair and would benefit more species in the long run. After the session ended, Vera was waiting for him in the corridor. Her face was full of questions. "How do you do it?" she asked. "Everyone else needs protection, but you just walk in and out like it's any other room." Jake looked back at the chamber doors as they closed. Inside, maintenance robots were already working to prepare for the next session. The keeper of records stood nearby, watching them with its expressionless face. "Maybe," Jake said slowly. "The real question isn't why we can walk in alone. Maybe it's why everyone else can't." 50 years earlier, Captain Alex Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the alien ship approach through the view screen. It was his first time seeing another intelligent species, and his hands shook slightly as he gripped the captain's chair. "They're beautiful," whispered Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's scientist. She stood beside him, recording everything with her instruments. "Look at their ship. It flows like water." The Eldani vessel did look organic, like a living creature swimming through space. Its surface rippled with soft colors that reminded Alex of soap bubbles. There were no hard edges or straight lines anywhere on its design. "Captain, they're sending another message," reported Lieutenant Mike Davis from the communications station. "Same as before. They want to meet face to face." Alex nodded. "Tell them we accept. We'll meet in the cargo bay in 1 hour." The Terra Nova had been exploring this sector for 6 months when they detected the Eldani ship. First contact protocols demanded careful preparation, but the aliens had been patient and friendly in their messages. They seemed genuinely excited to meet humans. An hour later, Alex stood in the cargo bay with Dr. Park and 2 security officers. They had cleared out all the equipment and set up a simple table with chairs on both sides. Earth's flag hung on one wall, while they had prepared a blank wall for the aliens to display their own symbols if they wished. The Eldani delegation materialized in a shower of golden light. They were tall and slender, with large eyes that glowed softly and skin that seemed to change color based on their emotions. 3 of them appeared, holding hands in a triangle formation. "Greetings," said the center one, though its mouth didn't move. The words appeared directly in Alex's mind. "I am Speaker Luminara. We bring you peace and friendship." Alex stepped forward carefully. "Welcome aboard the Terra Nova. I'm Captain Rodriguez. This is Dr. Park and our security team." "Security?" Luminara's skin shifted to a confused purple color. "We sense no danger here. Your minds are so quiet." Dr. Park looked at Alex with curiosity. What do you mean by quiet? The three Eldani exchanged glances. Their skin colors swirled faster, showing growing concern. Luminara released her companion's hands and took a step toward the humans. May we touch your thoughts? It is how we truly meet someone for the first time. Alex wasn't sure what that meant, but he nodded. If it's safe. Luminara reached out with her hand, stopping just inches from Alex's forehead. Her large eyes closed and her skin began to glow brighter. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Luminara screamed. The sound was unlike anything Alex had ever heard. It was pure terror and confusion mixed together, so loud that it seemed to come from inside his head. The other two Eldani collapsed instantly, their skin turning bright red as they writhed on the floor. "Dr. Park," Alex shouted, but the scientist was already moving, pulling out her medical scanner. Luminara stumbled backward, her skin flashing between different colors so fast it hurt to look at. "Impossible," she gasped, speaking aloud now instead of using telepathy. You are alone, completely alone. How do you exist like this?" "What's wrong?" Dr. Park demanded, scanning the aliens with her instruments. "What happened?" "Your minds," Luminara whispered, still backing away. "We cannot hear them, we cannot feel them. It is as if you are not truly alive at all." Alex looked around the room in confusion. "I don't understand. We're right here. We're talking to you. But you are not connected," said one of the other Eldani, struggling to sit up. "Each of you is trapped inside your own head, with no way to share thoughts or feelings with your companions. How do you survive such terrible loneliness?" Dr. Park's scanner beeped rapidly as she took readings. "Captain, their brain activity is off the charts. Whatever just happened, it shocked their nervous systems badly." "We apologize," Luminara said, her skin slowly returning to a calmer blue color. "We had no idea that humans were different in this way. In all our travels, we have never met a species that lives in such isolation." "Isolation?" Alex repeated. "We're not isolated. We talk to each other all the time." "You speak with sounds and gestures," the third Eldani explained, "but your thoughts remain locked inside your individual minds. You cannot share emotions directly or experience the comfort of mental connection. Each human is an island surrounded by empty water." Dr. Park was frantically taking notes on her tablet. "This is incredible. You're saying that your species shares thoughts naturally?" "All species do," Luminara replied. "The Zephyrians think as a swarm. The Valdori resonate through crystal harmonics. The Nethrons flow together like streams joining a river. Even the most independent species have some form of mental connection to their own kind. But not humans," Alex said slowly. "Not humans," Luminara confirmed. "You are the first truly solitary intelligence we have encountered. Each of you lives and dies, completely alone inside your own mind." The meeting continued for another hour, but it was clear that the Eldani were struggling. They had to hold hands constantly to maintain their composure, and their skin colors kept shifting to show their distress. "We must report this to the Council," Luminara finally said. "Your species will need special consideration when you join the greater galactic community." "What kind of special consideration?" Dr. Park asked. "There are places where connected minds cannot go safely," one of the other Eldani explained. "Situations where mental isolation would be an advantage rather than a curse. The Council will want to understand how humans developed this way." After the Eldani left, Alex and Dr. Park sat alone in the cargo bay, trying to process what they had learned. "They think we're freaks," Alex said quietly. "No," Dr. Park replied, studying her readings. "I think they're afraid of us. Did you see how they reacted when they couldn't read our minds? It was like they had tried to touch something hot and gotten burned." "But why would mental privacy be scary?" Dr. Park was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe because it means they can't predict what we'll do. Every other species they know shares thoughts in some way, but humans, we're completely unpredictable because our thoughts are completely private." Alex stood up and walked to the view screen, looking out at the stars. "Do you think that's good or bad?" "I don't know yet," Dr. Park admitted. But something tells me we're going to find out. Later that night, Alex recorded his captain's log entry about the encounter. He tried to capture everything that had happened, but one thing kept bothering him. When Luminara had tried to touch his thoughts, Alex had felt something strange. For just a moment, it was as if he could sense the vast network of minds that connected the Eldani to each other and to other species across the galaxy. It was like being shown a great web of light that covered the entire universe. And in that web, humans were the only dark spots, the only places where the light could not reach. Alex wasn't sure if that made humanity special or cursed, but as he looked out at the infinite stars, he realized that being alone in the universe might be the most human thing of all. The Terra Nova continued its journey, carrying the news that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. They had made first contact, but they had also discovered that humans were unlike any other intelligent species that existed. They were islands of consciousness in an ocean of connected minds, and somehow that would matter more than anyone could imagine. Commander Roy Baker walked through the ancient archives beneath Nexus Prime, his footsteps echoing in the vast underground chambers. 20 years of military service had taught him to notice details that others missed, and something about the Council's official history had always bothered him. The archives stretched for miles in every direction, filled with records from thousands of species spanning millions of years. Most diplomats never bothered to visit this place, but Roy wasn't most diplomats. As Earth's new security chief for the Council delegation, he wanted to understand exactly what humans had gotten themselves into. "Commander Baker?" A soft voice called from behind a towering shelf of crystal data cores. Roy turned to see Dr. Amy Foster emerging from between the stacks. The young neuroscientist was carrying an armload of ancient records, her face bright with excitement. "Dr. Foster, I thought you were studying alien psychology upstairs." "I was, but I found something strange." Amy set down her records on a nearby table. "I've been trying to understand why different species need different types of protection in the Council chamber. The official explanation is that each species has unique biological needs." Roy nodded. "That's what they told me during orientation." "But it doesn't make sense," Amy continued. "The Zephyrians bring warrior drones that are designed for combat, not biological support. The Valdori's energy shields are military-grade defensive systems, and the Eldani's companions aren't medical assistants, they're mental stabilizers." "Mental stabilizers?" Amy pulled out her tablet and showed Roy her research. "Every species except humans requires some form of psychological support to function in the Council chamber. They're not protecting their bodies, they're protecting their minds." Roy frowned. "From what?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. I've been going through these old records, looking for anything about the chamber's construction. And I found this." She opened one of the ancient books, its pages made from some material that shimmered like metal but felt like paper. The writing was in an old galactic script that few beings could still read. "This is a construction report from when the Council chamber was built. It's over 2 million years old, written by a species called the Architects. They designed and built the entire Nexus Prime station." Roy leaned closer to look at the strange symbols. "What happened to the Architects?" "That's the interesting part. According to all the official histories, they disappeared mysteriously about 50,000 years after building the station. But listen to this." Amy pointed to a section she had translated. "The Architects describe the chamber as more than just a meeting place. They call it a consciousness amplification matrix designed to facilitate unified decision-making among diverse mental architectures." "In plain English, please." Amy looked around nervously, as if worried someone might be listening. "I think the Council chamber is some kind of mind control device." Roy stared at her. "That's a serious accusation, Doctor. I know it sounds crazy, but look at the evidence. Every species needs mental protection to enter the chamber. Their representatives make decisions that often seem to go against their own species' best interests. And humans, the only species that doesn't need protection, are also the only ones who sometimes vote differently from the majority." Roy thought about the recent council sessions he had observed. Amy was right. The other species' ambassadors often seemed to vote in patterns that didn't make logical sense for their people's needs. There's more, Amy said, pulling out another record. I found engineering blueprints buried deep in the archives. The council chamber isn't just a room. It's built around something called a psychic resonance core. The entire structure is designed to amplify and broadcast mental energy. Broadcast to who? That's what I haven't figured out yet. But Roy, what if the reason humans don't need protection isn't because we're immune to something dangerous? What if we're immune to something that's supposed to control us? Roy was quiet, for a long moment, thinking about what Amy had discovered. You're saying that every decision made by the Council for the past 2 million years has been influenced by this machine? Not influenced, controlled. The other species don't realize it because the control is subtle. It feels like their own thoughts, but it's actually coming from the chamber itself. But why would the architects build something like that? Amy pulled out one more record, this one even older than the others. According to this, the architects weren't just another species in the galaxy. They were the first. They achieved spaceflight millions of years before anyone else and spread across the galaxy, long before other intelligent life developed. So they were explorers? No, Roy. They were rulers. This record describes their philosophy. They believed that younger species were too chaotic and violent to govern themselves effectively. The council system wasn't designed to promote democracy. It was designed to maintain control. Roy felt a chill run down his spine. And humans somehow slipped through the cracks. We didn't slip through anything. We were invited in. Amy's voice dropped to a whisper. Roy, what if the architects aren't gone? What if they evolved beyond needing physical bodies and now exist as pure mental energy? They would need agents in the physical world to carry out their will. Agents who are immune to their mental control. Exactly. Humans can enter the chamber, interact with the architects directly, and carry out tasks that the controlled species can't handle. Roy stood up and began pacing. But if this is true, why hasn't anyone else figured it out? Because anyone who gets close to the truth either needs mental protection to survive in the chamber, or they're already under the architect's influence. Humans are the only species that can think clearly in that room. What about the keeper of records? It's been around since the beginning. Amy nodded grimly. I think the keeper is one of them, or at least working for them. It's always watching the humans, making sure we don't learn too much. Roy stopped pacing and looked at Amy. If you're right about this, then every human who has served as an ambassador has been unknowingly working for the architects, yes. They probably don't even realize it. The architects just make suggestions that feel like the ambassadors' own ideas. But you figured it out. I'm not an ambassador, I don't spend time in the chamber, and I started asking the right questions. Amy gathered up her records. Roy, we have to tell someone about this. Who? If the entire council system is compromised, who can we trust? Amy was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But we have to do something. The galaxy has been living under secret control for 2 million years. Every war, every peace treaty, every major decision, it's all been orchestrated by beings that most people don't even know exist. Roy made a decision. We need more evidence, and we need to be very careful about who we tell. If the architects realize that we know the truth, they'll find a way to stop us, Amy finished. Roy, there's something else. I've been monitoring the psychic energy readings from the chamber during sessions. The levels have been increasing over the past few years. What does that mean? I think they're preparing for something big, some kind of major decision that will require more control than usual. Amy packed up her research. We may be running out of time. As they prepared to leave the archives, Roy noticed movement in the shadows between the shelves. For just a moment, he thought he saw a tall, thin figure watching them from the darkness. When he looked again, there was nothing there. But Roy couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer alone in their search for the truth. Something was watching them, and it didn't want them to succeed. The weight of their discovery settled on both humans as they made their way back to the diplomatic levels. They had uncovered a conspiracy that spanned millions of years and controlled the fate of entire civilizations. And somehow humanity had stumbled into the middle of it without even realizing what they had become. Professor Greg Thompson stood in the ruins of an ancient city on the dead world of Kepler 442c, brushing dust from a stone tablet that was older than human civilization. The archaeological expedition had been searching this planet for 6 months, following clues that Roy Baker and Dr. Amy Foster had discovered in the Council archives. "Professor, you need to see this," called Dr. Jenny Walsh from across the excavation site. She was kneeling beside what looked like a perfectly preserved building, her instruments beeping rapidly. Greg hurried over, his excitement growing as he saw what Jenny had found. The building was made from the same unusual metal-like stone as the Council chamber, and it was covered in symbols that matched the architect records from Nexus Prime. "It's definitely architect construction," Jenny confirmed. "But Greg, look at the energy readings. This place is still active after all these years." Greg ran his scanners over the building's surface. The readings were incredible, power levels that suggested advanced technology still functioning deep underground. "There's something alive down there." "Alive might not be the right word," said Dr. Pete Morris, the team's energy specialist. He was studying his own instruments with a worried expression. "I'm detecting organized patterns in the energy signatures. It's almost like thoughts." The team exchanged nervous glances. They had come to this dead world looking for historical evidence about the architects, but they seemed to have found something much more significant. "We need to go inside," Greg decided. "But carefully. If Amy's theories are correct, we might be walking into something dangerous." The entrance to the building opened at their approach, as if it recognized their presence. Inside, the walls glowed with soft light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Strange symbols appeared and disappeared in the air above their heads, written in languages that had been dead for millions of years. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's linguist. "And terrifying." They followed a corridor that sloped downward into the planet's crust. The deeper they went, the stronger the energy readings became. After what felt like hours of walking, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. Greg stopped in amazement. The chamber was filled with floating spheres of pure light, each one pulsing with different colors and patterns. There were thousands of them, arranged in complex geometric formations that hurt to look at directly. "What are they?" Jenny asked quietly. Before Greg could answer, one of the spheres drifted toward them. As it approached, Greg felt a strange sensation in his mind, as if something was trying to speak to him without using words. "Welcome, young archaeologist," said a voice that seemed to come from inside his head. "We have been waiting for your species to find us." Greg's team stepped closer together, their instruments detecting massive spikes in psychic energy. "Who are you?" Greg asked aloud. "We are what remains of the architects," the voice replied. The light sphere pulsed brighter with each word. "Long ago, we transcended the limitations of physical form. Now we exist as pure consciousness, eternal and unchanging." "You built the council system," Dr. Morris stated. "We built order from chaos," the architect confirmed. "When we first achieved spaceflight, we found the galaxy filled with young species destroying themselves through war and ignorance. We gave them peace." Sarah stepped forward, her recorder running to capture everything. "By controlling their minds, the sphere's light dimmed slightly. By guiding their decisions toward beneficial outcomes, left to their own devices, most species would have annihilated themselves within a few thousand years. We prevented countless wars and saved trillions of lives. But at the cost of their freedom," Greg argued. "Freedom to make the wrong choices is not a gift," the architect replied. "We have maintained galactic peace for 2 million years. No species under our guidance has ever faced extinction from their own actions." Jenny was scanning the other spheres with her instruments. "How many of you are there?" "We number in the millions. Every architect who ever lived chose transcendence over death. We are the collective wisdom of our entire species, working together to guide the younger races toward prosperity." "And humans?" Pete asked. "Where do we fit into your plan?" The sphere moved closer, its light becoming more intense. "Humans are unique. Your species developed true mental isolation, something we did not expect. When you entered our sphere of influence, we could not guide you as we do the others, so you decided to use us instead, Greg said, understanding dawning in his voice. Initially, yes. We thought to make humans our agents in the physical world, able to act on our behalf without being overwhelmed by direct contact with our consciousness. But we have been observing your species for 50 years now, and we have learned something troubling. What? Sarah asked. Humans make good decisions without our guidance, the architect admitted. Your representatives in the council often choose courses of action that benefit the greatest number of beings, even when those choices work against human interests. This should not be possible. Greg felt a chill. Why shouldn't it be possible? Because intelligent beings are inherently selfish. Every species we have encountered requires guidance to act in the greater good, but humans do so naturally, even when it costs them personally. This suggests that mental isolation may not be the disadvantage we believed it to be. The other spheres began to move, forming new patterns in the air above them. Greg could feel their attention like a physical weight pressing down on his thoughts. We have been debating among ourselves, the original architect continued. Some of us believe that humans represent an evolution beyond our expectations. Others argue that your species is simply too young to show its true nature. What does that mean for the galaxy? Jenny asked. We are not certain. For the first time in 2 million years, we face a species that challenges our fundamental understanding of intelligence and civilization. Your existence suggests that our guidance may not be necessary for all species. Pete was studying his energy readings. You're afraid of us. Not afraid. Concerned. If humans can govern themselves effectively without guidance, then perhaps other species could do the same. But removing our influence after so long could result in chaos. Sarah looked around at the thousands of consciousness spheres. So what are you planning to do? We have decided to conduct an experiment, the architect replied. We will allow humanity to operate without our influence for 1 standard galactic year. During this time, we will observe how your species handles the challenges of interstellar politics. And if we fail, then we will resume our guidance of all species, including humanity. But if you succeed, the sphere paused, its light flickering, uncertainly. Then we will consider whether our age of guidance should come to an end. Greg realized the enormous significance of what they were hearing. You're talking about freeing the entire galaxy. We are talking about risking everything we have built over millions of years, the architect corrected. But your species has forced us to question whether our methods are still necessary. The team spent several more hours in the underground chamber, recording everything they could about the architects and their plans. When they finally returned to the surface, the weight of their discovery felt overwhelming. We have to tell Roy and Amy immediately, Greg said as they packed up their equipment. And Jake Morrison needs to know what's really happening in those council sessions. Do you think we can handle it? Jenny asked quietly. The responsibility of representing free will for the entire galaxy? Greg looked up at the alien stars above the dead world. I don't know, but I think we have to try. The architects have been making decisions for everyone else for 2 million years. Maybe it's time to see what happens when people get to choose for themselves. As their ship lifted off from the planet's surface, none of them noticed the small sphere of light that followed them into space, maintaining a careful distance as they headed back toward council space. The experiment was about to begin, and the architects would be watching every move humanity made. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat alone in his quarters aboard Nexus Prime, staring at the evidence that Roy Baker and Dr. Amy Foster had compiled. 3 weeks had passed since Professor Thompson's team had made contact with the architects, and now, Jake faced the most important decision in human history. Tomorrow the council would vote on the Kepler Accords, a treaty that would determine mining rights across 12 star systems. It seemed like a routine political matter, but Jake now understood that nothing in council politics was routine. The architects want us to support the Zephyrian proposal, Amy explained, pointing to the psychic energy readings from recent council sessions. Every time Ambassador Morrison enters the chamber, the energy spikes suggest direct communication attempts. Roy nodded grimly. And if you look at the proposal itself, it would give the Zephyrians control over resources that could make them the dominant military power in this sector, which would destabilize the balance of power and potentially start a war, Jake concluded. A war that would give the architects an excuse to increase their control over all species. Captain Steve Morgan, who had led the covert mission to document the architect's influence, spread out his recordings on the table. We have enough evidence to prove the conspiracy, Jake. Video testimony from the architect's spheres, energy readings that show mind control in action, and historical records that expose 2 million years of manipulation. Jake stood up and walked to the window overlooking the council chamber far below. But if we reveal this during tomorrow's session, what happens next? Chaos, Amy admitted. Some species will be grateful to learn the truth. Others will be terrified of losing the stability they've known their entire existence. The Zephyrians and Valdori will probably see us as destroyers, Roy added. They've built their entire civilizations around the assumption that the council system is legitimate. But the Eldani and several other species have already shown signs of wanting more independence, Steve pointed out. Jenny Walsh's linguistic analysis suggests that some council members have been unconsciously fighting against the mental influence for years. Jake turned back to his team. What about the architects themselves? What did Greg's team learn about their reaction? Amy pulled out her latest report. They're watching everything we do. Professor Thompson's group detected surveillance spheres following them back from Kepler 442c. The architects are treating this as their experiment to determine humanity's worthiness. And if we fail their test? They resume control over everyone, including us, Roy said quietly. Jake, they could probably force every human ambassador to resign and replace them with people who are more susceptible to influence. Jake was quiet, for several minutes considering his options. He could support the Zephyrian proposal, maintain the status quo and preserve galactic stability, or he could reveal the truth, risk everything and potentially free the galaxy from millions of years of hidden control. There's something else, Amy said softly. I've been studying the psychological profiles of every species in the Council. Do you know what I found? What? Every single species shows signs of suppressed creativity and innovation. Their technological and cultural development has been remarkably slow for the past 1,000,000 years. The architects haven't just been maintaining peace, they've been preventing progress. Steve leaned forward. What do you mean? Think about it. How many major scientific breakthroughs have there been in galactic civilization recently? How many new art forms or philosophical movements? The galaxy has been essentially stagnant because the architects have been guiding everyone towards safe, predictable choices. But safe choices prevent wars, Roy observed. They also prevent growth, Jake replied, understanding what Amy was suggesting. The architects have been keeping the galaxy in a state of permanent childhood. The next morning, Jake walked toward the council chamber with more certainty than he had felt in weeks. The corridor was filled with the usual preparations. Zephyrian, drones taking their positions, Valdori shields charging up, Eldani companions joining hands. Vera Chen caught up with him near the entrance. Ambassador Morrison, I wanted to wish you luck with today's vote. I know the Kepler Accords are important. Jake smiled at the young diplomat. Vera, I want you to watch today's session very carefully. Pay attention not just to what people say, but to how they behave. What do you mean? You'll understand soon enough. Jake entered the chamber alone as always and took his seat. The familiar sensation of psychic pressure washed over him, but this time he was ready for it. He could feel the architects trying to influence his thoughts, suggesting that he should support the Zephyrian proposal for the good of galactic stability. Instead, Jake stood up during the preliminary remarks. Honorable delegates, he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Before we proceed with today's vote, I believe the Council needs to hear some important information about the nature of this chamber and the history of our deliberations. A murmur ran through the assembled ambassadors. The keeper of records, standing near the central platform, tilted its head with what might have been surprise. For the past 50 years, humanity has served on this council, under the assumption that we were participating in a democratic institution, Jake continued. However, recent archaeological evidence suggests that our understanding has been incomplete. The psychic pressure in the chamber suddenly intensified. Jake could feel the architects' alarm as they realized what he was about to do. Several of the other ambassadors began to shift uncomfortably in their seats, their protective entourages moving closer. The council chamber is not simply a meeting place, Jake declared. It is a psychic amplification device built by the architects, a species that transcended physical form millions of years ago. For the past 2 million years, every decision made in this chamber has been influenced by their mental manipulation. Their reaction was immediate and dramatic. The Valdori ambassador's energy shields flared so brightly that they illuminated the entire chamber. The Eldani representative collapsed, and her companions struggled to keep her conscious. Even the Zephyrian drones seemed to malfunction, their formation breaking apart in confusion. I have evidence, Jake continued, pulling out Steve's recordings. Video testimony from the architects themselves, admitting to their control over galactic civilization. Energy readings showing psychic manipulation during council sessions. Historical records proving that wars and peace treaties have been orchestrated for millions of years. The Keeper of Records stepped forward, its voice booming through the chamber. Silence. You do not understand the consequences of what you are doing. I understand perfectly, Jake replied. I'm giving the galaxy back its freedom to choose. For the next hour, Jake presented all the evidence that his team had gathered. He showed the council how their thoughts had been influenced, how their decisions had been guided, and how their entire civilization had been living under hidden control. Some delegations reacted with anger, others with fear. The Zephyrians demanded that Jake be removed from the chamber. The Valdori representatives began arguing among themselves in their crystal language. But the Eldani ambassador, supported by her companions, spoke up in a weak but clear voice. We have felt something wrong for years, she admitted. Thoughts that did not seem to be our own. Decisions that felt forced upon us. If what the human says is true, then we have not been free for our entire history. Other voices began to join in. Species that had never questioned the council system started to realize that their doubts and rebellious thoughts had been justified all along. Chapisando. Vote on the Kepler Accords was postponed indefinitely as the council dissolved into chaos. Some delegates stormed out of the chamber, others demanded immediate investigations, and a few simply sat in stunned silence as they processed the magnitude of the revelation. Jake remained in his seat until the chamber was nearly empty. Finally, the Keeper of Records approached him. You have doomed us all, it said quietly. The architects maintained peace for millions of years. Without their guidance, the galaxy will tear itself apart. Maybe, Jake replied. Or maybe the galaxy will finally have a chance to grow up. Over the following months, the revelation split galactic civilization along predictable lines. Some species embraced their newfound freedom and began making independent decisions for the first time in their histories. Others, terrified of the responsibility, begged for the architect's guidance to continue. A few species attempted to restart old conflicts that had been suppressed for millennia, but they were surprised to discover that their neighbors no longer felt compelled to fight. Without the architect's subtle manipulations pushing them toward predetermined outcomes, many long-standing disputes simply faded away. Jake established a new council system with voluntary participation and no central chamber. Species could choose to join discussions or remain independent. There were no binding votes and no hidden influences. It wasn't perfect. There were conflicts, disagreements, and mistakes. But there was also innovation, creativity, and genuine progress for the first time in millions of years. 6 months after the revelation, Jake received a message from the architects. The communication came as a simple text transmission,